Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada. With episode 759 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. Obviously, All Elite Wrestling preparing for their biggest show of the year, AEW All in Texas. We're going to go into great depth about that next week with a special solo Ultimate Preview episode, NXT building for NXT Great American Bash. Unfortunately, going head-to-head with that show next Saturday afternoon. We're going to have a ton to talk about there as well. And all of that will be coming up momentarily. But as we get into the show, the Silver King would be remiss if he did not remind you off the top that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave some 5-star ratings on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Not only do you get full-length audio episodes, you also get full-length video interviews. All of it on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Hit us up on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. We will do our best to read them on the air. And lastly, please do not forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
Sure hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Before we fully get into today's show, I did want to mention next week's schedule because it is absolutely loaded. On Tuesday, we'll have your full weekly WWE breakdown along with a Saturday night's main event Ultimate Preview. Wednesday, a double dose of Ultimate Previews for NXT Great American Bash and WWE Evolution. We will also do a retrospective of the original Evolution, all on a special Wednesday episode. Thursday, on its own, your AEW All-In Ultimate Preview. Saturday, 2 episodes, AEW All-In Instant Analysis, NXT Great American Bash, and WWE Saturday Night's Main Event Instant Analysis. That's 3 shows, 2 episodes, and then on Sunday, wrapping it all up, your WWE Evolution Instant Analysis. 6 episodes of performance-enhancing audio in 6 days. That's how we do it right here.
I'm happy. I'm pumped is what I am.
We are pumped indeed. Now, as we get into today's episode, we're going to kick things off with NXT, move over to AEW for the second half. There are timestamps in the episode description. If you choose to bounce around, you want to listen to one instead of the other, whatever the case, as always, I hope you listen to the entire show. Now, we're going to break down every single thing that happened in NXT this week.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
Because there's a pretty decent news item that kind of broke through over the last week. A newsletter called the MMA Draw, which appears to be legitimate. It's been very tough for me to verify, but it reported last week NXT will begin a, quote, recurring residency at the UFC Apex as soon as this fall. Now, you'll remember this was the site of the NXT Battleground Premium Live event last year, and we roundly panned that because the facility looked like absolute garbage on screen. Apparently, the Apex has since been renovated. It seats more than 1,000 fans. The interior has been overhauled like the WWE Performance Center was, with hundreds of LED panels, except this facility also has VIP suites, concessions, hospitality. WWE does not have any of that in Orlando. Now, from the sound of it, this looks like halfway between the PC and an arena in that the product is going to look far better, but costs will remain low. What's tough to understand about WWE making such a move would be the reasons behind it. If WWE is doing a run of shows on the West Coast and they want to bring NXT along and do 2 or 3 weeks from the Apex, okay, that makes a ton of sense. But for NXT on its own to just pick up and move over to Las Vegas for, let's say, a month, the costs associated with that, they would seem to seriously outweigh the benefit. Consider that all of the talent lives in Orlando for the most part. Not to mention the executives, creative team, production. Flying everyone in and out would seem nonsensical. Putting everyone up for a month in a hotel, it could work if some type of deal was made, but then you're asking them to potentially leave their loved ones, their pets, etc., all behind in Orlando, all because the production may be a little bit better on screen. Don't forget, WWE is being paid pennies on the dollar by the CW for NXT, something that's confused us really since this deal was signed, just given the ratings it brings in, the prestige of the WWE brand. Why it would add expense to simply justify the existence of this facility, I can't understand that. And beyond that, this is this whole Las Vegas focus that we've discussed on the show, and it continues to concern me. WWE has historically been an East Coast company, which has benefited them because that's where most of the major cities exist and where wrestling hotbeds have long endured. Not just New York and Chicago, Boston, Atlanta, the entirety of the South. Vegas is the home of UFC. But as we've said before, it seems like TKO continues to fail to understand that the WWE is not UFC. The audience is not the same. The product is not the same. The way it generates revenue is not the same. Shoving WrestleMania 42 back to Vegas, plus whatever this is going to be, it's all concerning. And it continues to tell me that TKO seems to lack understanding for what makes WWE WWE. But look, let's go ahead and see what this winds up being before we go too deep on it, criticize it too harshly, and it ends up being they're just there for 2 weeks and it's not a big deal. But again, I saw this story and I read through the report and I was just befuddled. That's probably the best word I can use as of this period of time. So, okay, let's move into NXT. Talk about everything that happened on the show. Mike Santana was added to the TNA Championship match over the weekend, so it will be a triple threat with Trick Williams defending against Santana and Joe Hendry. This is what we hoped and expected, but it was extremely strange the way TNA went about doing this. It was planned because commentary for the opening match on NXT, they were already mentioning Santana being in the title match, despite the entire show being taped last Tuesday before TNA made this announcement. Now, all expectations are that Santana is going to win the title at Slammiversary. That's July 20th, presumably pinning Hendry instead of Trick. That way Williams doesn't have to take the fall and it is, more solid for WWE. They don't have to worry about their guy looking bad, but that's the expectation going in. So that set the stage for Hendry against Wesley on NXT. Williams was on commentary. Hendry caught Lee flying for a fireman's carry spinebuster. Santana saved as High Rise attempted to interfere. That allowed Hendry to hit Standing O and get the win. This was a better match than really anything that aired on NXT last week, but I did find myself just waiting for interference the entire time. I just figured it was going to come from Trick. Not that much notable as there was only a stare down after the bell, but it is crazy how far Wes has fallen from being the greatest North American champion of all time to a guy who's just occasionally used in feuds and loses pretty much every single match that he's in. Hendry and Santana later did an interview segment backstage agreeing that they are united in defending TNA from Trick, even if they'll be on opposite sides at Slammiversary. They rallied around fighting High Rise next week. They still got in each other's face about bringing the title back to TNA. There's going to be a contract signing for the TNA Championship at Great American Bash, which, fine, I guess. I'd prefer another match on the show. But given the women's title is already being defended at Evolution, at least there's going to be some action here involving some notable names. So it's probably a fair exception to my rule, but I don't know. I don't think this really needs to be on a premium live event. Obafemi backstage said he was intrigued to see who would become number one contender, and he doesn't actually want to see the challengers destroy each other. He wants a legitimate test. Yoshiki Inamura stepped up looking motivated. Femi said he's the hunter, not the hunted, and no one will be making a move without him being prepared. Jasper Troy later claimed that he'd easily run through Inamura to get to Femi, who probably wants to avoid him. Extremely solid from Jasper. There's legitimacy to this guy that you just cannot teach. It's crazy how fully formed Femi has become as a superstar in just a short period of time. You could throw him on the main roster tomorrow. The problem with doing so is he needs to dominate immediately out of the gate, and therefore he really should not get that call until such a position is ready for him. Another reason why WWE bringing back the likes of Rusev was nonsensical, because that's a guy who's kind of in the way of kind of Femi moving up to the main roster. So we had Inamura against Troy for a number one contendership. Jasper came out holding 2 extra change this time, just, I guess, so you knew he was serious. Yoshi told Josh Briggs to stay backstage. Inamura tried to square off and either sumo wrestle or beat Troy like in an Oklahoma drill. He lost either way. Troy hit a sidewalk slam early, boss man slam late. Inamura caught him for a huge body slam followed by a spinning slam, and then he hit his finishing splash to get the squeaky clean 1, 2, 3. I loved that for him. Strong match, awesome win for a dude who's totally won this crowd over. It's a crazy booking for a show that's supposed to compete with All In, especially when the women's title, again, is not even on the program. I'm super interested about it. I believe Yoshi and Oba will ultimately put on a banger when all is said and done. But, for him to win this match clean the way he did, that was pretty impressive. Javon Evans caught Jasper from behind after the bell, landing his springboard cutter from the top rope. The visual was really cool because it started in the background as Oba and Yoshi did a stare down. Then they cut to the move. Then they cut back to Evans celebrating in the background as Oba and Yoshi kind of watched all this happen. I cannot imagine Troy losing to Inamura only to then beat Evans. So NXT's really going to need to figure out how to rehabilitate him after taking consecutive losses. This is following a strong debut where he seemingly took Oba Femi to the limit. So how do you take Femi to the limit, lose to Inamura, and then lose to Evans back to back? It's a little bit messy. Jordan Grace came out for the main event, and what was basically billed as an airing of grievances, the spoken word start to her entrance remains horrendous. Grace said getting to WWE was the hardest thing she's ever accomplished, but last week reminded her that she thrives under pressure. She put over Evolution and her excitement to be involved rather than watching from the sideline like she did years ago. Jordan decided to be vulnerable, wondering whether she was good enough or even belonged in WWE. Grace talked about becoming undeniable and promised to beat JC Jane so she could remind herself that she's meant for this. Her last line got cut off, which was unfortunate because it was the most character work that she's gotten to date. So Jane comes in, she said, "Hey, I'm not impressed that you can bench press more than me because you can't carry and you won't win my title." JC took exception to being called the most beatable champion in history, saying she's at the top of her game and no one is bowing down at the feet of people who came into NXT from elsewhere, like her and Blake Monroe. Grace cut her off, but Fatal Influence beat her down 2-on-1 until Monroe saved, getting physical for the first time in NXT. Jasmine Nix got out of dodge, so she's clearly still injured and not cleared. The heels ranted at Ava when she came out after this, so she made a tag team match, not for TV next week, but for the Great American Bash. So the heels stormed back into the ring only to get laid out again by the faces. Nice segment that accomplished much of what we were concerned about last week, just when it came to Jordan not having a character or really a legitimate story arc since joining WWE. It atones for the women's titles being on Evolution, being on Evolution. It also gets Monroe into a major show right out of the gate. Those are hugely positive developments. And based on what we just said about the men's match, despite this being non-title, maybe it should main event the show. There's going to be a serious lack of star power at Great American Bash, and I'm just extremely curious to see how this card winds up getting built. It's certainly not strong enough to put any type of dent into AEW All In, that's for sure. They are not going all the way out to put on a banger show. And that's not to say the matches won't be good or entertaining or the booking won't be solid. High possibility all that's the case. But if you were going to put your best foot forward to try to combat AEW All In, that is not what Great American Bash is shaping up to be. It's shaping up to be a TV special. It's being billed as a premium live event. Let's just be kind of completely candid about that. Tatum Paxley, after being pulled backstage last week, she was standing in front of her dollhouse crying to Zaruka about just trying to do something good by supporting Izzy Dame. They insisted that Dame is not their friend, so she stormed in yelling at the friends before softening her voice, saying she just feels like she's won Tatum over as a friend and she doesn't want to lose that. Zarya got frustrated. She dipped out. So Izzy suggested they become a team since Zaruka is already friends. They're already working together. And that led to a match. It's Zaruka against Tatum and Izzy. Paxley entered with the calling. Solruka did a surfboard splash off the back of Paxley, who was being held on Zarya's shoulders. Really cool spot. Zarya then tossed her into Dame ringside. Another cool spot where Tatum hit a running crossbody into the turnbuckles, and then Izzy grabbed her arms and legs and pulled her backwards as if she was a rope. Dame chokeslammed Zarya like she was nothing, with Paxley adding a somersault leg drop. Ruka got the hot tag. That included one strange flip over move that did 0 damage. Zaruka combined for keg stand, but Paxley broke the fall with a step off, one knee code breaker. Dame then hit a full code breaker, but Paxley was unavailable for the tag after that. Ruka caught her with a double boot backstabber. Zarya geared up for a spear to take her out, but Tatum shoved Izzy out of the way, and Zarya speared Soul to hell. Dame landed a Liger Bomb immediately after that and pinned the North American champion. This was awesome. Better than most main roster women's tag team matches, and I would say of late, except When's the last time we've seen a main roster women's tag team match? Extremely fun spots from both teams, crisp offense. They all worked really well together. Just a ton of talent in that ring with bright futures in front of them. Zaruka obviously had to lose in order to continue all the multiple stories that are being told, including the slow burn tension between the two faces. Izzy utilizing that win for a title opportunity makes a lot of sense for Great American Bash. That was my thought. The best part of the show on Tuesday night, as far as I was concerned, it over-delivered in a major way, especially for a taped episode. Better than last week's live show, in fact. 3.75 stars, B+ just for this match. There's been this trending concept online, by the way, that Zarya is not being booked well because I suppose she's among the signature signees, the 5, that either hasn't won a championship or truly contended for one. She's 26 years old, and she has the least big stage experience out of those 5 that were signed. Yet she's still been booked like a monster, despite not necessarily dominating win and loss categories. Her character is far more developed through this storyline and feud than it otherwise would be if she was just out there crushing people. Zarya is more interesting than Jordynne Grace. Apples to apples. I mean, you're watching it live on television. So, would it be nice if she was booked stronger and had a championship already? Sure, but they gave it to Sol Ruca. Are you going to, disagree with that decision just because you wish Zarya had it because she's a talented signee, Sol's a talented developmental prospect, and they're clearly building to a feud between them. So she's going to have the title opportunity and likely the strap on her shoulder sooner than later. The calling celebrated backstage with the guys saying Tatum looks like she may become a family member. Ava then booked an expected title match for Izzy, so the girls celebrated their plan actually working. Hank and Tank came in accusing Culling of attacking them because they got hit with steel chairs last week. They had to get pulled apart by a bunch of dudes, so Paxley suggested they put their money where their mouths are, put the titles on the line next week, to which Ava agreed because, of course she did. More on that in a bit. Little nice follow-up segment, just showing that Tatum is being fully factored into the group, and it does not seem to be like an entire play simply to use her and throw her away. Even if she's being gaslit into believing she actually has friends when she doesn't, it doesn't feel like they're using her. Putting Tatum in this role, not knowing how devious the others are simply because she wants companionship, makes a lot of sense for her character arc. It probably is going to result in heartbreak again. And the question is, why won't anyone just love Tatum Paxley? And it's tough to understand if you're thinking about it. Ava backstage brought Ethan Page, Vanity Project, and Ricky Saints together for what she wanted to be a civil conversation. Saints immediately lost his cool, demanding his rematch. Page said he would dictate challengers on his terms. He said Ricky could earn a title shot if he survived the Vanity Project gauntlet. Jackson Drake faked a sore throat, cough, and stuff to mock Saints, which was very funny and well done from a neophyte wrestler. They all laughed at Ricky. Saints was willing to do this as long as he got to choose the stipulation for their title match on the back end. Ava, of course, agreed to both the match and the stipulation without weighing in whatsoever. She's the biggest pushover in WWE authority figure history. That's only a minor criticism, though, for what was an extremely strong backstage segment. It was the most natural that Saints has come across, which has been much needed for his character. Everyone looked great. Project were the perfect assholes. Page got to puff out his chest with his, signature confidence. This happened immediately after the women's tag match. It was the best stretch, 1-2 punch of segments throughout the entire show. Page basically serving as like the house dad for Vanity Project. It's making me laugh every single time. They're really incredible together. Miles Bourne fought Lexus King. The Florida Gators defenders were in the crowd watching the match. So Bourne did a gator roll in the ring, and he also gator chomped again, right in my freaking wheelhouse. Never thought I'd see a gator chomp like this during a wrestling match. King sort of wore LSU colors. I don't think it was purposeful. Bourne looked great throughout. He got the dub, and he celebrated with the Gators. Afterward, King bumped too soon on what was basically a zigzag finisher, which kind of messed up in the final seconds. Other than that, it was a good look for Miles. King bumped his ass off. He flashes like he usually does despite taking the L. The Gators had fun, and Bourne got the dub as he needed to. NQCC commiserated backstage with Ren Sinclair, making me pop immediately by uttering Javon's whole "that boy is bouncy" thing, referring to the loss last week. She said she's selfishly glad that Tavian Heights is still around, even though he put on last week, he didn't get the win. Charlie Dempsey said it proved his point that Heights needed more time, so Tavian shot back. He wants the same opportunity Miles got. Dempsey ultimately accepted under the stipulation that Heights stop asking if Charlie wins. This is a strange storyline just from the standpoint that they're all friends. NQCC isn't a cult, so why can't Tavian just stop training with them? What is actually preventing him from leaving? It's not like they've all signed contracts and stuff. He has so much agency that he's standing up for himself. So why not just walk in the other direction? Like, what's actively preventing you from doing that? And as we've said before, why exactly is NQCC even breaking up? I'm not sure I understand, especially when the tag team division needs talent badly. All of that said, the segment individually was well done, and all three of them came across nicely. Dark State got another 4-man promo package with Dion Lennox and Saquon Sugars again standing out as legitimate, while Osiris Griffin and Cutler James were straight up terrible. Why you would start a promo package with your weakest talker, I will never understand. None of them said anything of consequence. It was super distracting how they kept lowering their masks to speak, then lifting them back up when they were done. It's disappointing how far this has already fallen. It's time to split off Lennox and Sugars, make them a tag team called Dark State, run with them, let them win the NXT tag team titles as soon as possible. They're both legitimate on the mic. They're really good in the ring. The other two guys, Griffin and James, are weighing them down, especially Cutler. I don't need to relitigate what I said last week about him specifically, but it is agonizing watching this guy on television. Thea Hale fought Lainey Reed. Thea's entrance music, it is obviously horrible, like the intro of it, but Lainey's is so freaking funny because it's basically the exact same beat and tone as Jada Parker's, except there's a light banjo over it because she's country. It might be the worst entrance music in WWE alongside Zelina Vega. They had identical fishnets on during the match, which was kind of odd visually. Reed got caught trying to use the ropes on a cover, but after a violent kick to Hale's head, midsection, not her head, she was able to grab the bottom rope anyway for extra leverage, getting the 1-2-3. The referee was completely out of position. Thea's hand may have been under the rope as well. It was actually a fun little match with Thea continuing to improve week by week. Maybe I'm missing something, but Lainey just does not work for me on any level right now. And I'm almost at the point where I'm saying, stop trying to make Lainey Reed happen. It's not going to happen.
Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Luca Crucifino called out Tony D'Angelo because he was sick of his loyalty being questioned. They relitigated some of their shitty storyline before Luca stood up for himself, saying he left college early with eligibility remaining and turned down offers from law firms for a chance to be by Tony's side in WWE. That's not really how it works. You don't just get an offer to be a lawyer. You pass the bar and then seek a job and try to become a lawyer. But okay, I digress. Those 4 sentences, though, the promo that Crucifino cut, they were the best part of this entire feud. Stacks came out thanking Crucifino for helping him win the Heritage Cup. D'Angelo immediately assumed that what this guy who hates him said was true, that Luca was actually with Stacks. So Crucifino just turns, slugs D'Angelo. Then Stacks starts celebrating with him, excited that he's on his side. So Crucifino slugs Stacks as well. Then he leaves the ring, and you have Tony and Stacks, who hate each other, blood feud, mafia adjacent, a group where people sleep with the fishes. They're sitting on the canvas looking at each other rather than immediately brawling and trying to kill one another. We are being asked to suspend our disbelief to such a ridiculous degree in this storyline. Now, let me be clear. This was the best segment since the turn. Not even a question about that. Crucifino showing agency, standing up for himself. That was important. And it is far more interesting for him to kind of go on his own than side with one guy or the other. But where does that leave us? A triple threat for what? Where's Adriana Rizzo? Why is she still in hiding if these guys are able to sit or stand near each other without even brawling? Is the hit still out on her? What did she do wrong? So this was a step in the right direction for sure. It still feels like the worst storyline on the entire show by a significant margin. Andre Chase apologized to the Chase U students in class, saying he may need to actually rethink his ways, but tough love is all he's known to this point. Chase recalled how the guys brought him back to the university. He announced he got Cale Dixon a singles match next week. They accepted the apology. Dixon hugged him. Uriah Connors praised him for breaking his toxic patterns. Chase said he'll have his back as long as Dixon actually listens to him around the ring. Slightly better than last week. I'm really not into this direction for Chase U at all. We'll see how it goes. You know what? I said the Mafia story is the worst thing in NXT. This is worse than that. So these are the two worst things. They're happening simultaneously, and neither of them should be going the way they are. It's almost inexcusable professional wrestling booking, how poor these are going, along with Dark State. So 3 of the last 4 segments that I mentioned are just unfathomably mediocre to bad. somewhere in that range, and it is immensely frustrating. So look, that was not the go home for NXT Great American Bash. That's going to come next week, and of course we will discuss that in our NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. But in terms of matches booked for the show, it seems like it's Obafemi and Yoshiki Inamura, the women's tag team match involving Jordan Grace and I almost called her Mariah May, Blake Monroe teaming up against Fatal Influence. Looks like 2 North American Championship matches. Fingers crossed. I mean, Ricky Saints and Ethan Page definitely should be on the show, and Sol Ruka against Izzy Dame probably should be as well. And that's a 5-match card right there. So we'll see if anything else gets added to it. I think the tag team title match is happening next week on television. So again, we will circle back in 7 days, actually 6 days, because we'll be doing that show on Wednesday, and we'll have your full NXT Great American Bash Ultimate Preview. Moving over to NXT, we benefit this week because we did a double dose of AEW Collision last week on the podcast. So all we have to talk about is AEW Dynamite 300. And I'm glad, because it was a really good episode, really high quality work across the board in the ring, and plenty to talk about coming out of the show. Also keeps this episode relatively short for the holiday weekend. Now, unlike what we normally do breaking down really any program, because this was just a single episode of AEW and every segment was important, we're just going to run down the show in order from start to finish. 3 of the 5 matches were storyline relevant, 4 if you want to be lenient. At this juncture, with All in Texas literally next week, it should have been 5 for 5. Interestingly, there were only 8 segments on the entire show, and 3 of them were kind of smushed together involving Hurt Syndicate. Still, despite that, this was probably my first or second favorite AEW Dynamite episode of the year. Lots of storytelling, moving plots forward, no dips from quality wrestling, no Don Callis bullshit in the middle of the ring. Sure, there were matches that were clearly unimportant, and yes, there were plenty of things that unfortunately lacked logic in the storytelling and such, but the show rolled along really fast, and for me, sitting on the couch on with a holiday weekend upcoming, I was super entertained. So let's go ahead and break down everything that happened on Wednesday night. Hangman Page opened the show confirming his passion and promise for All in Texas, promising to keep his word with his life. He said he could be hung by a rope from the ceiling, but he would have to be killed to not take the title from Jon Moxley. Dude, I'm pretty sure if you were hung with a rope from the ceiling, you would die. Hangman said he was ready for the Death Riders and the Elite, and he upped the stakes, challenging to a Texas death match. Mox declined, saying Page thinks he wants that. He really does not in reality. You sure about that, Mox? He said it would be too much pressure for Hangman, which is why he only succeeds at lower level opportunities, like winning the Owen. Mox said being considered the best wrestler in the world is basic bitch shit.
Thank you!
Reiterating that Page doesn't have it inside him to be AEW champion or beat him in a death match. I didn't think that this was a CM Punk reference. Perhaps it was. I saw people thinking that. I just thought Mox was coming out there and saying, Hangman, Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, all you guys think you're the best wrestler in the world. That's basic shit. I'm beyond that. That's the way I took it, regardless. Hangman lightly slapped him on the neck. They start brawling. Page struggled to get a fork out of his pocket, and Mox just sat there waiting for him to get it. Marina Shafir then smacked him across the face 6 different times. Page slowly walked her down until Claudio Castagnoli attacked. I guess he's back. Mox and Shafir left as Claudio and Wheeler Yuta beat him down in a corner, hitting the neutralizer and leaving to some boos. Hangman then grabbed a mic saying, "Bitch, I'm still standing." So that's 2 bitches in one segment. Claudio twice picked up and threw down a chair in the crowd for some reason. Then he approached the ringside area. Samoa Joe and the other ops calmly showed up with Claudio and Yuta backing down. Page then stopped Shafir from using the briefcase on him. Why she went back in the ring? Who knows? He screamed,
Give me what I want. Give me what I want!
While holding the briefcase, so Mox agreed. Shafir just stood around in the ring. She's like watching this, looking at him. Like, I don't know, was she lost? Just, I don't know. Like, this guy is an adversary. You don't have the briefcase. You can't attack him. So she's standing there. So Paige, like, feigns like he's leaving the ring, jumps over the rope, absolutely annihilates her with a buckshot lariat. Let's start with all the positives, because there's a lot of them. The challenge is perfectly sensible for Hangman's character and the status of the feud. His promo, okay, it was a tad eye-rolling and repetitive, but it was super passionate as usual. Mox's was even good coming back at him. That's like 3 promos in a row where Mox has just been stellar. The best character and promo work of his entire title reign to date. So the stage was set nicely for the stipulation, which would probably be a bit ridiculous if this was in WWE because it's their first meeting in this feud. But because it's AEW, it fits incredibly well. The Texas Death Match, hardcore stipulation, and just what AEW does in ring. The buckshot lariat at the end, it was the hottest part. The crowd went crazy for it. But again, the pauses and delays getting there were extremely odd. There are fewer negatives, but there's still some. Where the hell were the other baby faces when Page was getting his ass handed to him in the ring? The ops were clearly on standby, but they were cool just hanging out backstage, watching this guy get bludgeoned. I get that it was necessary for the part of Hangman's promo that followed where he's like, I'm still standing, but it was completely illogical when they were obviously at the ready watching their guy get beat down. Furthermore, Mox's contention that Page is not capable or extreme enough for this match type. Not only has Hangman had an equally extreme set of matches in AEW to Mox, he's 4-1 in Texas death matches. And not only that, Mox literally lost to Hangman in a Texas death match just 2 years ago at Revolution 2023. If memory serves, it was one of Mox's best matches in AEW. I think I went 4.5 or 4.75 stars for it. So I'm not sure about you. I'd remember being hung over the top rope by a chain. Where's the continuity here? Why wasn't it part of Hangman's challenge that he beat Mox in that match before, so he was going to challenge him to it again? Do they both have amnesia? This is the main event of your biggest show of the year. Can you imagine if WWE ran back CM Punk against Drew McIntyre inside Hell in a Cell and didn't reference the first match in the challenge and build, except it's not just a match that's happening at SummerSlam, it's the main event of WrestleMania? That's the equivalent here. So yeah, I'm totally into the booking for AEW. It's the right match to main event all in. The stipulation allows for all the expected interference with Death Riders, Ops, Elite, Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, Gabe Kidd, Darby Allin, maybe even Sting and Bryan Danielson, possibly Eddie Kingston. That's all hugely positive, just as it was for Bloodline rules at WrestleMania 40. You needed that stipulation so John Cena and The Undertaker and The Rock, all those guys could show up. But man, this was a 7 out of 10 segment that could have been a 10 if it was just more logical and if it was produced better. TBS Championship was on the line. Mercedes Moné defending against Mina Shirakawa. Great spot early as Mina did her spinning basement crossbody over a bent-over referee. Mercedes caught her with a Meteora on the ring apron, but the challenger came back with a tornado DDT ringside. Toni Storm was sitting near commentary with a plate of food and a cake in front of her, with a face on her like she was holding in a shit or something like that. I couldn't exactly decipher the look on her face and what she was trying to convey. Mina hit a nice flying sling blade off the ropes and a glamorous driver for a weak arm lift 2.9 falls finish. She also hit a Bazaiku knee for a 1 count. I hate AEW when it's 1 counts, man. Please stop doing that shit. Only to get caught with a lung blower by Moné, who soon rolled her into a small package to retain the title. Mercedes delivered a cheap shot after the bell, then attacked Toni with the title when she stupidly checked on Mina and turned her back. Then Moné licked a cake for some reason and said off mic, "Your time is up. My time is now," quoting John Cena for some reason. This was excellent. The finish was a tad sloppy and sudden, and I'm not sure I understand why Mina dominated Mercedes to such a degree bell to bell. I totally get wanting Moné to escape with a win. That way Shirakawa looks strong, but Mercedes looked like the inferior wrestler throughout this match, particularly in the final act. Between Tony's face on commentary and her idiotic positioning after the match, she just looked like a dummy. But the match was really strong. 4 stars A-, I want to say. I mean, borderline, maybe it's a 3.75 B+ because of the finish and the way it went down. I would have gone higher with a full finish. If this had another 5 to 7 minutes, it was an A match. And it was the perfect follow to keep the crowd hot coming after the show open. We had MJF, Brody King, Anthony Bowens, and AR Fox for the number 2 spot in the Casino Gauntlet. The good news at the start is it seems like AEW is only doing 2 men's qualifiers for the first 2 spots, which is sensible, but that was not completely clear last week. It was also positive that Bowens was announced as the pride of pro wrestling, not the 5-tool player, which we've been asking for since he returned. Much, much better as the primary moniker. All that said, Bowens and Fox being in this match was simply ridiculous. Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, this is a gauntlet for a number 1 contendership, and these are the best 2 spots. Number 2, the first entrants are the only ones guaranteed to be in the match. Bowens entered this on a 3-match losing streak. He doesn't have a single notable win since returning. Fox is 0 for 19 in singles matches during his AEW career. Yet he's contending for a guaranteed spot in a number one contendership. That is patently absurd. And it again points to AEW just booking matches to book matches and letting people wrestle just to let them wrestle without any legitimate rhyme or reason. As far as what happened, MJF dipped over to commentary at the bell. He was hysterical, making fun of Excalibur. After a bunch of topes, he attacked with a chair to grab the momentum for himself. Fox later hit a really cool corkscrew brainbuster. MJF reintroduced the chair, so King punched him through it, hit a triple cannonball in the corner. Fox hit a 450. He got mollywopped. MJF took out Bowens with a hammerlock DDT. Fox did a seated, springing, draping DDT. This dude is so innovative. Bowens took a gonzo bomb with Fox late to break it. MJF slid in with Salt of the Earth to get the win. Mark Briscoe came out after the bell with a kosher pickle t-shirt. Fans got on MJF just like Miz back in the day for the tiny balls deal. Briscoe then challenged him to a promo battle next week, which was very odd. Another excellent match. MJF was the obvious and correct winner. Just like last week, Briscoe's promo was great. It was catchy. He is a tremendous babyface and so much better when he actually speaks like a real human being and doesn't try to act an ass like when he's around the conglomeration. I don't have much else to say about the match other than King looked like an absolute star during it. AEW has straight up refused to go all in with him, pun not intended, but they should consider doing it in the latter half of the year. Give him the TNT title or something, like in September or October at the absolute minimum. Interestingly, despite the men getting 2 of these qualifying matches, guess what? The women, they're not getting the same opportunities despite also having a casino gauntlet at All In. So unless both of these matches are going to happen next week on Dynamite or they were unannounced by commentary and they're happening on Collision, then the men get qualifying and build for their casino gauntlet and the women, they just get it thrown on the show. Instead, the women are getting a random 8-person tag match on Collision this week. I mean, what are we doing, you know? Jet Speed came out after that match ended for a full frontal attack on Hurt Syndicate. MJF dipped out of the ring immediately, not helping his guys. Not that they needed it. Despite Jet Speed getting the jump on them, Syndicate completely laid them out like a couple jobbers. So they got back to their feet, the gimmick being they're still standing. So Syndicate went back to the ring, beat the shit out of them again, and the sequence repeated. Mind you, Syndicate were in full suits. Bobby Lashley didn't even take off his jacket. Then they grabbed a mic, Kevin Knight did, saying Syndicate would only retain the titles if they kill them. So pretty much exactly what Hangman Page said earlier in the show. Then he said Shelton Benjamin hits like a bitch and he wants to fight him one-on-one. This segment accomplished 2 things. First, it showed that Jet Speed are a couple tough, gutsy sons of bitches. Second, it showed they have no business being anywhere near the number 1 contendership for the AEW tag team titles, given how easily and consistently they've been dispatched by the champions time and again. I'm not going to relitigate the absurdity of how MVP gives out title matches despite teams not being worthy and beating nobody's ahead of them. But this did absolutely nothing to raise my interest in the match, nor believe them to be credible contenders. The division is really struggling. And also, how many times are we going to say bitch in one episode of television? I counted 5 in 2 hours. I may have missed one. It loses its effectiveness. If you just say FFF or bitch, bitch, bitch over and over again, when you actually say it, it doesn't mean anything. The Young Bucks bragged to each other about Tony Khan paying for a limo they purchased on the company card. Their faces were pasted on the side of the limo with stickers, and the cabin was filled with about a dozen boxes of their shoes. They went around town for a bit, and as this was happening, I was just perplexed at like how this could have been viewed as even the least bit interesting or entertaining. Then the limo arrives at the arena, and they exit in full gear, which they were not wearing before. And then they got an absurd amount, like Cody Rhodes level, of pyro entering the ring, but they're EVPs and they're heels, so it makes sense that they got that. But the whole limo gimmick, I don't understand why that was on the show. It was the worst part of Dynamite by a mile on Wednesday. So we had Bandito, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly against Konosuke Takeshita and the Bucks. Takeshita beat O'Reilly with Raging Fire. I did not find this match particularly notable. It seemed relatively short, so as I was getting to like start breaking it down, it was already over. The fans were hot, so I'm glad they enjoyed it. Swerve and Ospreay attacked after the bell, wanting an answer to their challenge. Swerve clarified, we don't actually want the EVP titles. We want Tony Khan to have all the power. He already has all the power. He's the owner. Vice presidents don't get to overrule owners and CEOs in any company, which is why this storyline has been shitty from the start. Anyway, Ospreay asked if they were the Young Bucks or the Young Cucks. They declined, and then they asked why would we have any motivation to put our EVP titles on the line against you? What are you guys offering us?
Thank you.
Ospreay suggested, well, if we lose it all in, we will not challenge for the world championship for an entire year. Swerve got pissed immediately. The Bucks put it on him to decide if he was down for those terms. He ultimately accepted. Now, I don't believe my commentary on this last week directly led to the clarification in this segment, but those were two massive, massive plot holes that I covered extensively on the prior show, both of which got filled in here, and the story is much better for it, but we should not have left last week's show with those questions. The only slight critique that remains for me here is that the sides of the stipulation are totally uneven. The Bucks are putting major power on the line to prevent a couple of guys from being champion only for 1 year when they both have another 10 to 15 years in their careers. Ospreay has never been champion. Swerve has once. It's not like them being champion would affect the Bucks at all. But that did create an interesting booking scenario because it now seems more likely than it did before that Swerve and Ospreay lose, because you could tell a really compelling story about neither of them being able to challenge for the title. Swerve blaming Ospreay, they feud, then they kind of make good after that. And then guess what? If that did happen, this edition of All In is airing more than a year before next year's All In, 2026, back in Wembley Stadium. So Ospreay's stipulation of not being able to contend for the title, it could expire when he becomes number one contender for the championship at All In, and he wins his first title in Wembley Stadium, like many have thought. I'd probably still have gone with something a little bit heavier, no world title and no salary for a year, something that would actually hurt them besides the prestige of the championship. But it was much better than it otherwise would have been, leaving it open one side. The Bucks would have had no reason to accept the stipulation. Still, I feel like just not challenging for the title for 1 year, it's not that big of a deal when you consider it in the grand context of their careers. Then you had Swerve and Ospreay against Dralistico and Beast Mortos. The faces won rather easily, hitting all their signatures, and the bell sounded shortly after AEW came back from commercial. They were arguing before the bell, but they shook hands and hugged afterwards, so I guess all is good with them, and they're ready for their match. And lastly, we had the Continental Championship on the line, Kazuchika Okada defending against Kota Ibushi. Ibushi hit an excellent lariat before avoiding Rainmaker. Then get this, he had an avalanche Tiger Driver for a false finish. I mean, that shouldn't be a false finish. Okada avoided Kamigoye, landed his own massive lariat. Then he hit the dropkick and Rainmaker for the 1-2-3 to retain the title. Kenny Omega returned as expected to prevent the post-match attack, running off the heels with a steel chair. There was also a Golden Lovers like flash really quick with a powerbomb into a German suplex that effectively ended the show. Now, this was the first matchup between Okada and Ibushi in nearly 4 years. Certainly not their 5-star classic at Wrestle Kingdom 14, but great stuff nonetheless. The vibes were real. Memories kind of wafting of their epic battles in New Japan, specifically that one. It hit me right in the feel spot.
You rub me just right every week.
And it was also great to see Ibushi be able to wrestle like this again. It's been a while. He looked completely washed. The Omega return was solid. I did want a little bit more from him. He also looked like, I guess, kind of raggedy. AEW has this weird thing with Omega and Ospreay in particular, where they just kind of come out to the ring and sometimes they look like crap. And that should never be the case. You want your stars to look like stars. Now, you're going to say, well, Silver King, what about, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in WWE? Okay, understood. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, level-wise, are not Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. They're closer to a Cody Rhodes, who comes out in a suit looking good all the time. Or Randy Orton, who, okay, sometimes he just comes out in full gear, but he looks ripped and clean cut. He's not wearing a baggy t-shirt, unshaven, with his hair just kind of weird. That's what Omega looked like. And it was like, well, you were backstage the entire show. You were ready for this, right? Like, you didn't just come in off a plane and like rush to the arena. So I just want these guys to look like professionals a little bit more. Anyway, I digress out of that. As we've said for weeks now, this feud has been about everything but Omega and Okada. So I truly hope the focus of the next week is solely on them, because you literally do not need any other soul involved, given their stature, the stakes for both titles, and just what Omega and Okada in 2025 means to professional wrestling. I don't want Callis involved in the promo next week. I don't want Ibushi out there. I don't want Lance Archer and Trent Beretta and all these Don Callis family losers around. I want Omega and Okada. Okada can speak English well enough let them in the ring, cut a promo, or do an interview segment, something like that. I only want it about them. And we'll see if that's what we get in the match. If not, it's going to be really disappointing. 4 stars, A-, match of the night. It did start slow, but look, maybe that's the feels getting to me. Maybe some of you disagree, but I absolutely loved this. And that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. It was a really strong edition of AEW Dynamite, as I said. NXT, super solid, definitely better week over week than it had been. And we're off and running to Ultimate previews next week of both of these shows. So we're going to have a lot of performance-enhancing audio for you. A reminder one more time, Tuesday, big WWE show, regular breakdown, Saturday night's main event Ultimate preview, Wednesday, NXT Great American Bash and WWE Evolution Ultimate preview, along with an Evolution retrospective from the first show. On Thursday, your AEW All-In Texas Ultimate preview. Saturday, 2 episodes. Earlier, AEW All-In Instant Analysis. Later, NXT Great American Bash and WWE Saturday night's main event Instant Analysis. And then on Sunday, your WWE Evolution Instant Analysis. 6 episodes, 6 days. That's how we do it right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, some additional reminders first. This show
It's all about the five.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we'll read it live right here on the show. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast. Follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter, at Getting Over on Blue Sky. Episode drops, news analysis, highlights, all that good stuff. You can also send in questions and comments for the show. And don't forget,
I happen to love the number 5.
hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis each week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. We're a free show. We're an ad-free show. Please support us financially. That is it. Like I said, huge week coming up. Silver King is going to try to enjoy the 4th of July best I possibly can and rest his vocal cords as well. With that, it is officially time to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.